The DCEU was built on the strongest superheroes in the world, Batman and Superman. It looked unstoppable, ready to challenge Marvel's dominance. But behind the hype came weak stories, bad choices, and endless reboots. What began with promise collapsed into chaos. This is the story of the DCEU's rise and fall. Golden era of the DCEU. To understand the rise and fall of the DCEU, we need to rewind to the late 2000s and early 2000s. At this time, DC Comics wasn't just competing with Marvel. They were still considered the king of superheroes. The Dark Knight trilogy by Christopher Nolan had reshaped the entire genre. Batman Begins, 2005, showed that superhero stories could be grounded and cinematic, while The Dark Knight, 2008, became a cultural phenomenon. It grossed over $1 billion worldwide, becoming the highest-grossing superhero film of its time. Joker by Heath Ledger became legendary, and suddenly, DC was on top of the world. And it wasn't just the movies. DC's animated universe was also thriving, with shows like Justice League Unlimited and Young Justice commanding loyal fan bases. On the other hand, Marvel's animation efforts couldn't compete, with only Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, gaining some recognition. Meanwhile, DC was also dominating video games. Rocksteady's Batman, Arkham Asylum, 2009, and Arkham City, 2011, were honored as some of the best superhero games ever made. By every measure, DC was leading the industry. The only area where Marvel held the edge was in comic book sales in the US. But compared to movies and games, comics were a small portion of the market. In Hollywood, DC was the brand everyone trusted. Warner Brothers released Green Lantern. Then came 2011. For decades, Warner Brothers was the giant of superhero cinema. With DC Comics under its wing, it brought Superman to the big screen in the 1970s and Batman in the 1980s and 1990s. By the late 2000s, after Nolan's Dark Knight films, the studio was confident it could rival Marvel's rise. That confidence led to their next big swing, Green Lantern. Warner Brothers released Green Lantern, starring Ryan Reynolds. It was supposed to launch DC's own shared universe, their answer to what Marvel had just started with Iron Man, 2008. But instead of a bold new beginning, Green Lantern became a disaster. Critics mocked its messy script, uneven tone, and cartoonish CGI. Fans rejected it. The film grossed only $220 million on a budget of $200 million, making it a huge flop. For the first time, Warner Brothers realized they weren't invincible. The momentum from Nolan's Batman films was slipping, and their competitor, Marvel Studios, was quietly building something bigger. So the blueprint was already in motion, and it started with Iron Man. Iron Man had already introduced Nick Fury. Thor and Captain America were on the way. Marvel's long-term plan was clear, and Warner had no equivalent strategy. Desperate for stability, Warner turned to Christopher Nolan, the man who had just proven superheroes could be taken seriously. But Nolan wasn't interested. His Batman story was finished, and he had no desire to build another franchise. With Nolan out, Warner had to find a new creative leader. Their eyes turned to Superman, the most iconic hero of them all. If Batman had worked, surely Superman could have anchored the future of DC. Warner handed the project to Zack Snyder, a director known for visually bold, comic-inspired films like 300 and Watchmen. He was one of their most trusted filmmakers, and his reputation suggested he could bring a mythic, larger-than-life quality to Superman. The result was Man of Steel, released in 2013. The film reimagined Superman as a conflicted, more grounded hero. It featured stunning visuals, a powerful Hans Zimmer score, and massive action set pieces. At the box office, it earned $668 million worldwide, finishing as one of the top films of the year. But audiences were divided. Some loved the new take on Superman, gritty, serious, and modern. Others hated it, saying it stripped away the hope and optimism that defined the character. Critics were split down the middle. Still, for Warner, it was enough. The movie made money. Superman was back. And more importantly, they finally had a foundation for a shared universe. At Comic-Con 2013, Warner Brothers dropped the bombshell announcement. Batman vs. Superman was coming. The two biggest superheroes in history, together on the same screen for the first time. Fans lost their minds. Marvel's Avengers might have assembled a team, but DC had the most significant icons of them all. Soon after, Warner revealed a full slate of upcoming projects: Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Aquaman, and of course, Justice League. For the first time, the Justice League felt real. The stage was set. DC had the world's attention, but the cracks were already forming. Batman vs. Superman and the first backlash. In March 2016, Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice arrived in theaters. The hype was enormous. Fans had waited decades to see Batman and Superman share the screen. The movie earned $870 million worldwide, which is impressive, but below expectations. By comparison, Marvel's Avengers movies were clearing the billion-dollar mark with ease. More importantly, the reaction was brutal. Audiences were split again. Some fans defended it as bold, operatic, and true to the comics, but many criticized its grim tone, convoluted story, and the infamous Martha scene. Superman's sudden death also felt rushed and unearned. Instead of uniting audiences, Batman vs. Superman created division. Warner Brothers had counted on this movie being their Avengers. Instead, it left the future of the DCEU uncertain. Suicide Squad and studio panic. Just a few months later, in August 2016, Warner Brothers released Suicide Squad. The marketing promised a stylish, edgy rock and roll take on DC villains. Fans were excited. The film even won an Oscar for Best Makeup. But behind the scenes, panic had set in. After critics trashed Batman vs. Superman, Warner demanded changes. The studio handed the movie over to a trailer editing company, ordering them to cut a lighter, faster-paced version. The result was a chaotic film with awkward editing and a muddled story. Despite all that, Suicide Squad earned $776 million worldwide. But once again, audiences were frustrated. The excitement around the DCEU was fading. Wonder Woman. In June 2017, Wonder Woman hit theaters, and for once, DC struck gold. Directed by Patty Jenkins, the film told Diana's origin as a hopeful, inspiring hero. Critics loved it, audiences loved it, and it grossed $822 million worldwide. For the first time, the DCEU had a universally praised hit. But instead of solidifying the universe, Wonder Woman highlighted just how far Snyder's darker vision was drifting from what audiences wanted. Justice League. Meanwhile, Zack Snyder was deep into Justice League. The plan had originally been for 2 films, but Warner scaled it down to 1. Then tragedy struck. Snyder's daughter passed away, leading him to step away from the project. Warner brought in Joss Whedon, the director of Marvel's Avengers. But instead of just finishing the movie, Whedon rewrote massive chunks and oversaw 2 months of reshoots. His orders: lighten the tone, make it funnier, and abandon Snyder's long-term setup. The result was a Frankenstein's monster of a film. Half Snyder, half Whedon, and all messy. The CGI was unfinished. The tone shifted scene to scene, and even Henry Cavill's Superman had a digitally erased mustache that became a meme. Released in November 2017, Justice League grossed only $657 million worldwide against a budget that ballooned to $750 to $800 million. Analysts said it needed $300 to $370 million just to break even. Instead, it lost money and became a symbol of DC's failures. By the end of 2017, the DCEU looked doomed. Aquaman and temporary hope. But in December 2018, Aquaman surprised everyone. Directed by James Wan, the film leaned into colorful visuals, mythology, and fun adventure. It earned $1.15 billion worldwide, becoming the highest-grossing DC movie ever. Suddenly, the DCEU had hope again. Warner shifted strategies. Instead of universe building, they focused on smaller, standalone stories. Shazam, 2019, charmed audiences with its family-friendly tone, grossing $367 million on a modest budget. Birds of Prey, 2020, was marketed around Harley Quinn, but due to poor promotion and the pandemic, it only grossed $205 million. Pandemic and collapse. The real blow came with Wonder Woman 1984. Released in December 2020 during the pandemic, it premiered on HBO Max and in limited theaters. It grossed just $160 million and was widely criticized for its messy plot and weak villain. The magic of the first film was gone. Meanwhile, Marvel had rebounded with Spider-Man: No Way Home in 2021, proving audiences still loved superhero films. DC, on the other hand, looked lost. James Gunn and the final years. In 2021, James Gunn, fresh from Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, directed The Suicide Squad. Critics praised it, but the pandemic and simultaneous streaming release hurt its box office. Gunn's spin-off show, Peacemaker, became a hit, proving his style connected with fans. At the same time, Warner pushed Black Adam, 2022, as a new turning point, with Dwayne Johnson promising it would change the hierarchy of power in the DC universe. Instead, it underperformed and flopped financially. By 2023, the DCEU was running on fumes. Shazam! Fury of the Gods flopped. The Flash, once seen as the franchise's big reset button, became another critical and financial disaster. Even Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom failed to recapture the magic of the first. The dream of a shared universe that began with Man of Steel in 2013 collapsed by 2023 with flop after flop. So what killed the DCEU? Rushing to catch Marvel. Marvel took its time. Iron Man, in 2008, introduced one hero. Then came Thor and Captain America, each with solo stories. By 2012, the Avengers felt earned because fans were already familiar with the characters. DC, however, wanted shortcuts. After Man of Steel, 2013, they jumped straight into Batman vs. Superman, 2016, cramming in Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Cyborg, and Aquaman without giving most of them solo movies. It meant audiences had no real bond with half the Justice League. So when the big team-up arrived, it lacked the excitement and payoff Marvel had mastered. It felt rushed, not earned. Constant studio interference. Instead of trusting directors, Warner Brothers constantly panicked and meddled. Every time a movie underperformed, they changed direction midstream. Suicide Squad, 2016, was supposed to be gritty, but executives forced last-minute edits, turning it into a messy, music video-style film. Justice League was even worse. Snyder left, Joss Whedon reshot huge chunks, and the final product looked like two films stitched together. Even Wonder Woman 1984 was hurt when Warner rushed it onto streaming before theaters fully recovered. Again and again, the studio chose quick fixes over long-term trust. The result? Patchwork films that felt messy instead of confident. Leadership changes and no clear direction. From 2016 to 2023, Warner Brothers couldn't keep steady leadership. First AT&T took over, then Warner Media, then Discovery under David Zaslav. Each new boss had a different vision. Some wanted Snyder's dark, mythic style. Others wanted Marvel-like fun. Later, executives pivoted to standalone projects like Joker and the Batman that weren't even part of the DCEU. This constant flip-flopping left audiences confused. One year, our DC promised an epic Justice League saga. The next year, they ignored it. Without a consistent plan, fans lost faith. The DCEU didn't collapse overnight. It slowly unraveled under indecision and corporate tug-of-war. An identity crisis. The biggest problem? The DCEU never knew what it wanted to be. Snyder's Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman were dark and operatic. Wonder Woman was hopeful and inspiring. Shazam leaned into comedy, while The Suicide Squad went for violent, over-the-top chaos. Instead of one clear style, the movies clashed against each other. Fans who loved one tone often hated the next. Marvel succeeded because, no matter the director, their films felt like part of the same world. DC never found that balance. The result was a universe that felt inconsistent, unpredictable, and eventually forgettable. The DCEU never failed for lack of heroes. It failed chasing Marvel instead of trusting its own power. From Man of Steel to Aquaman 2, it was chaos, ambition, and collapse. Imperfect, unforgettable, and gone. If you enjoyed this breakdown, like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.